There is a common misconception about remote hiring. Many applicants assume that when they apply for a global remote job, a human recruiter manually reads every resume to evaluate skills, and then decides if the candidate's location works for the team. While this individualized approach may happen in some smaller environments, modern remote hiring at scale relies on a fundamentally different type of infrastructure. In many enterprise systems, geographical eligibility is rarely a manual decision made by a human being. Instead, it often functions as an automated, structural barrier. Before a recruiter ever reviews an application, the candidate data may be processed by a rules engine designed to sort and filter applicants by country. Today, we are going to examine exactly what happens to candidate data when a remote job has regional restrictions and how these internal hiring systems operate beneath the surface. To understand this architecture, we must first look at the financial and legal realities of international remote work. Remote hiring is frequently described as borderless, but in practice it is heavily governed by structural regional filters. These filters are not designed to judge candidate quality or assess professional experience. They exist primarily to manage legal compliance, payroll feasibility, taxation, data protection laws, and operational constraints across different jurisdictions. Employers cannot simply wire money across borders without potentially triggering international tax liabilities, creating local compliance obligations, or violating labor laws. For international applicants, understanding this structural reality is helpful. A silent rejection from a remote role is often not a reflection of your professional qualifications. Rather than that, it can be a mechanical output of a system determining that the necessary local infrastructure is not currently in place to employ you in your jurisdiction. Let us look at the first mechanism of this process: the candidate data model. When you submit an application through an applicant tracking system, commonly known as an ATS, the platform generally does not store your resume merely as a flat, readable document. Instead, it parses your input to create a structured data record. This process transforms your application from a visual document into a standardized digital profile. The system extracts specific variables to build this profile, categorizing your data into distinct, searchable fields. The most critical region-related fields include personal identifiers, such as your current country of residence, your state or province, and your specific time zone. It also captures your work authorization and residency status, which might include citizenship, specific visa status, or tax residency. Furthermore, it records employment preferences, identifying whether you are applying as a full-time employee or as an independent contractor. In many internal workflows, the system then assigns compliance attributes to this newly structured profile. These attributes can dictate which internal payroll systems, benefit packages, and corporate legal entities are authorized to process a candidate with your specific data footprint. Before any human review takes place, the hiring system is attempting to establish exactly where you are located and what classification of worker you can legally be under local laws. Setting up legal entities or managing compliance in new countries requires significant administrative resources, which is why employers rely heavily on this data. Once this structured profile exists, it encounters the next operational layer: talent pool indexing and start of process gating. Hiring platforms often utilize a rules layer, acting as an automated logical checklist that enforces the employer's region-specific constraints. Candidate profiles are indexed by the structured variables we just discussed, such as country, time zone, and work authorization. Because the data is indexed, the system can evaluate large volumes of applications rapidly. This is where start of process gating frequently occurs. Depending on the employer's workflow, the rules engine checks the mandatory regional fields against programmed requirements. For example, the system might check if the candidate is eligible for a specific global payroll integration, or if they reside in a region where the company already has an established employer of record. If no compliant payment path exists, the candidate may become technically ineligible to proceed, regardless of their professional background. If your region does not match these predefined rules, the system often initiates an automated routing protocol. The application might be routed, deprioritized, or archived into a separate queue. This gating usually happens at the very beginning of the process. From the employer's perspective, this operational design ensures that recruiters spend their limited time reviewing the profiles of individuals who are already deemed legally and operationally viable for employment. To visualize this clearly, let us examine a specific employer-side example. Imagine a technology company based in Germany is opening a remote engineering role. The human resources team knows that direct employment may require German or European Union work authorization, local social security registration, and adherence to regional data handling rules. To manage this, the employer might configure a mandatory country of residence field in their applicant tracking system. They can set the rules engine to prioritize applications only from candidates residing within the European Union. Alternatively, if the company utilizes a global contractor model, the ATS may verify if the candidate's jurisdiction is supported by their third-party payment vendor, and whether local tax regulations allow for independent contractor classification without introducing employment misclassification risks. When a candidate from outside the approved regions applies, the ATS reads the input data, recognizes a mismatch in the geographical constraints, and can automatically route the profile to an archived status. In many systems, the application is simply excluded from the normal review queue, and the recruiter may not be surfaced the profile for standard review. The system is merely executing its configured function, evaluating hiring eligibility based on infrastructure and legal constraints before human review can occur. To summarize this mental model, remote hiring systems rarely view candidate locations as flexible suggestions. They often treat them as structured data points governed by compliance and payroll limitations. The process relies on a candidate data model to organize your information and talent pool indexing to filter and route that data automatically. Recognizing this architecture helps clarify why many applications for remote roles can be filtered consistently across global platforms. To see a structured view of how regional filters, hiring fields, and routing logic can fit together, you can access the Remote Hiring Systems map. This resource provides a structured reference for understanding how applicant tracking and regional filtering can operate inside remote hiring systems. You can find the link in the description below.